Hey, guess what? We're live. That countdown clock certainly suggests as much. I'm Robert Wilonsky, the Communications Director here at Heritage Auctions. And of course, as you well know, you're joining us for a state of the market discussion about world and ancient coins. To my left, of course, is Sam Spiegel, the Director of International Numismatics. And joining us from New York is the Executive Vice President of International Numismatics, Cris Bierrenbach. Hello, Cris.
Hello.
Sorry you couldn't join us, but Sam and I were just catching up on the fact that he didn't say hi to me when he saw me walking in 100 degrees the other day, as we live about a mile from each other.
Next time.
Yeah, that's not forgivable.
It's not, but I tend to walk fast and keep my head down. As I'm going to do kind of today, because as you notice, for those who have been frequent viewers of our Zoom conversations over the last year, we're kind of doing these remotely. We were apart from each other. Sam and I couldn't be in the same room with each other, for instance, not to mention this close. But it's a big change, and we've also gone to a new format, and as much as that, you'll actually see your questions on the screen, and we'll address them over the course of the next hour or so. We have a lot of prepared remarks, or a lot of at least an idea of what we'd like to talk about, but we want to hear from you. So please type your comments, whether you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube, or email Tommy Noel, who's the man running this particular conversation, at tommyn@ha.com. In fact, I believe you can see Tommy's email address there in the bottom screening. So Tommy will relay your questions, as I do not necessarily have access to them this go round. But this is exciting. I will say, given our new format, if there are any technical glitches, first of all, blame Tommy. No, don't do that. But this is exciting because we're going to be a little more interactive. We'll be able to talk to each other, talk at each other, talk with each other. Sam's actually got some coins he'll actually be able to show you. So this is an exciting new way to do this particular conversation. And we're going to keep doing these as we go forward for all the categories. So we're excited to get to it. And you guys have a lot to discuss, as a matter of fact. I guess we probably should begin with one of the biggest coin sales we have had, certainly in my year here, which was the Paramount collection.
Yeah, that was the biggest world coin sale that any of us have ever had in the history of Heritage. It was a banner sale by any stretch of the imagination.
42 million?
Just under 42 million for the world and ancient coin portion. When you add in the U.S. coins that were sold in Long Beach in February, it added up to just under 50 million for that collection.
Look, that is certainly extraordinary. And what amazes me about that particular, the Paramount collection, is this is what you predicted. In fact, Cris, when we talked about this a few months ago, we had talked about the fact that you were up here Christmas Eve unpacking it. It was the greatest Christmas you had ever had. So I assume it was certainly not to be unexpected, the success of the Paramount collection. What do you guys think accounted for it? Its success?
Well, two things. One, pent-up demand, which is continuous. It seems to be increasing continuously over the last 18 months. And the other one, undoubtedly, is the quality and rarity of the coins that we had in that auction. As you said, it was, a great pleasure to handle this collection, a great honor. I don't know if we're going to have a chance to present a collection quite like this, and still we were very pleasantly surprised, and at some lots we were nearly shocked with the amount of activity that we had in the sale, the amount of interest, how slow the sale actually went because there was so much bidding, and the final result. If we add a few, there were 16 U.S. coins in the group. So if we add those all together, we just about 50 million for a group of coins, a very special group of coins. And, there's this beautiful hardcover catalog that just came out. It will be tremendously important for future generations to go back to the sale and look at the results and sort of study them and understand what went on.
So obviously we see some comments below. We'll see comments, we'll see questions talking about the German Stater coins that were in Paramount as well. We'll get at some specific coins from Paramount in a moment. But I want to go back to something you just said a moment ago, which is one thing that you think led to the extraordinary results was pent-up demand. What do you mean by that? I'm fascinated by that sort of idea that there is this sort of well of need, of interest, of demand for these incredibly rare world and ancient coins that were in this auction.
Yeah, I mean, we see a global drive to alternate investments and assets, and coins obviously have been for a long time sort of a place of investment. But coins also are a very social activity, collecting coins, right? I mean, people go to coin clubs and meet with their friends and share stories, and this is almost as important as collecting. And without that opportunity over the last, I guess we're going now into a year and a half, and people having more time and other factors that all sort of created the perfect storm. And people cannot buy coins at coin shops, cannot buy coins at coin shows. They are limited to auctions, right? I mean, now we're starting, the ANA is going to restart in presence now in August, and we'll see how that goes. But certainly we saw this across the board, and it's not only for coins, that demand for the products that we sell in collectibles particularly has gone through the roof. And that's obviously great for our consignors and great for our future.
Well, Sam, I'd like for you to also address that, because certainly you're talking to clients, you're talking to buyers and consignors throughout this process. What were they saying to you about their interest in the Paramount collection, in as much as that it related to the larger world and ancient coins category?
Yeah, so one thing that Chris mentioned, I think, is absolutely true, which is pent-up demand over the last year, where you have clients who they can't go to coin shows. They want to add to their collection. They're not able to, spend their extra funds traveling the world or going out to dinner or anything. So, we find that people turn to their hobbies. And so if you're a coin collector, you would devote a lot of attention to coins. That was a trend we saw over the last year. Over the last, say, 5 or 10 years, there was another trend that I think played into this, which is a shift in the market. Maybe it goes back 15 or 20 years, a shift in the market from dealers and retail sales to auctions. So 20 or 30 years ago, most major coins in the world and ancient coin market were going to be sold through dealers, private retail transactions from a dealer to a collector. There were still auctions, of course, and auctions have been going on for centuries in the world and ancient coin market, but more often than not, it was dealers who were participating in those auctions who would buy inventory and then retail it to their clients. And so with the advent of the internet, though, it levels the playing field and lowers the barrier to entry for retail clients to participate in these auctions without having, they're not professionals. They're not able to travel the world to attend the auctions and see the coins in hand. And now with the internet and high quality photographs, they can participate in those. So the trend over the last 20 years is a shift to buying coins primarily at auction. And so that larger trend, coupled with the more acute trend over the last year of people not being able to buy coins anywhere else and having more disposable income to put towards their collections, I think led to this, perfect storm that resulted in the Paramount collection selling for what it did.
Right, and it's interesting you talk about the shift away from retail. I mean, it would seem to me that we've talked about this any number of times, which is a thing is worth what any two people are willing to pay for it. Isn't this basically saying this is the most honest and most transparent way to understand the value of this coin and of this particular market at this particular moment?
Yeah, absolutely. Clients ask, we often get asked, what do you think this is worth when they're thinking about selling something? And I very rarely these days give an estimate. I will give instead comparable auction results. That's the most accurate depiction of the market. And then you can extrapolate from that if this is a grade higher or a grade lower, what do we think that's going to sell for? But it's really verifiable, relevant auction results that's going to be the most accurate gauge of where the market is. And as you say, it's the most honest way to figure out the value. And maybe I'm just too much of a capitalist, but I like to trust the market to take the material to where it should be.
But it's interesting, isn't this, it's also interesting in as much as that we're talking about world and ancient coins, where often, as in the case, for instance, of the Paramount collection, you're dealing with coins that don't have comparables. You don't know what that thing is worth because it's never sold before, because you've never seen it before. So isn't that kind of what made the Paramount, as you've said before, a once-in-a-generation event, but also a thing that sort of reset the market?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to think about it. It reset the market. We included estimates in the Paramount collection just to, give some rough idea. But if people were following along with the auction catalog during the auction, they knew right away, just throw the estimates out the door. Those were absolutely meaningless.
So I'm fascinated by that, because when somebody comes in, and we were talking about this yesterday about something else, estimates are there sort of to begin the conversation, but that's not where the conversation is meant to end. It's just a starting point to understand kind of where to begin this dialogue, and the dialogue being the bidding amongst, however many folks are interested in that particular coin.
Right. And that's a good way to think about it. It's where you begin the conversation. So it'll tell you, is this a $100,000 coin or a $5,000 coin? But oftentimes you'd have an estimate in Paramount of something at 100,000 and it would sell for 200,000. But at least if you know the ballpark that it's going to get into, what figures you should be thinking about to get into it. If you're thinking about it seriously, you need to be willing to go to.
Should we talk about the cover coin and how it became the most expensive British coin ever sold at auction? Because I certainly think that that's probably a good place to sort of understand the significance of the Paramount collection and its success.
Yeah, absolutely. And we knew from the get-go that this was going to be the highlight of the auction. I mean, and that's why we put it on the cover, because this was just far and away the best world coin in the collection. And frankly, I would say the best coin in the collection. There was one US coin that wound up selling for more than this, but this is a much more interesting and rare piece, I think, that is much more accessible to people, why it's such a cool coin. But so it was the Edward VIII 5 pound, the only one that has ever been auctioned, as far as we could tell, that wound up selling for just over $2.25 million. And this was a coin, as we said in the description, that not even a king could have, because he asked for a copy or an example of the coin, which he was refused when he abdicated the throne. So this is, as important to British numismatics as anything else in the world.
Speaking of estimates and conversation starters, do you recall offhand where this began?
Chris, do you recall what this was?
500,000 or 300,000?
Well,
I'm not sure.
We started the bidding on everything in Paramount with no starting bids whatsoever.
Yeah.
The estimate on this one, I think, was 500,000 and up, or something like that. But with no real comparable results to go off of, that was just sort of a very conservative estimate.
So what's it like for the two of you when it gets to $1 million, 1.5, 2 million, when the bidding tells you of the demand for and the interest in this particular coin, given its rarity, given its significance, and just given the fact that this may be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to own it?
Well, it's, for us, is absolutely a great fun. We had a great time during the auction. It was fantastic. And it also makes us very happy for our consignor. And whenever we see runaway coins, whenever we sort of had an idea, obviously because of the quality of collection, as usual, as I mentioned before, but the feeling that we get is the feeling I get is joy, because it's you seeing the action, you seeing people competing for the coin, you see the bids coming in and the price going up, and we are happy for our consignors that they're going to have their numismatic collecting efforts rewarded they enjoyed this collection tremendously when they collected over the last 20 plus years. And then when it became time to sell, it was also financially rewarding for them. So, and just feeling the historic moment, like for us, coin nerds like Sam and I, we just loved producing this auction. We loved everything about it along the way, the production of the catalog, the grading of the coins, the descriptions, attributions, research. And then obviously the day of the auction was tremendous. We had over 130 coins in this auction sell for six figures, over 100,000. So, for me, like, I sometimes have to stop and make sure that I'm living this reality, because 30 years ago I was trading coins for soccer figurines, in the pennies or in the a few dollars, and now here I am, together with the team, presenting this historical event. So that was great fun, great joy. The results were amazing. And people have received their coins now. They receive emails, with comments on how great the coins are. So we'll have this catalog for a long, long time on our shelves.
Have you guys ever sold in an auction over 130 coins for more than $100,000?
Not even close.
Definitely not in world. I'm not even sure in U.S. coins we've done that. That's something worth looking into. But in a typical platinum night auction, we'll have a dozen or so coins reach six figures. This past January, which was a very strong auction, we had 17 coins sell for six figures. So to have over 130 reach that threshold it's kind of hard to fathom just how impressive it is, because you have to recalibrate when we get back to our normal day-to-day. Handling a $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 coin is really special, but compared to Paramount, that was sort of a cheaper coin.
Right. Did you find that in the Paramount auction that there were more bidders and different kinds of bidders than you had have seen before? Did it bring new people into it? Because I'm fascinated. I mean, certainly there can't be the same pool of people bidding on all of these coins over and over and over again. Have you found that, whether it's the pandemic or whether it's the last 5-10 years in the shifting and reshaping of the market, that there are different kinds of bidders and collectors coming into this?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing we saw with Paramount, and I think a lot of this is a testament to our marketing efforts, was we saw people from other collecting fields at Heritage cross over to Paramount, because what we really tried to do, and I think we accomplished, was to convey to everyone, not just world coin collectors and specialists, but all clients, that this is really a once in a lifetime kind of opportunity. So if you're thinking about getting into world coins, this is the time to do it. Like, you are not going to have the opportunity to get these sorts of coins again. So we saw some major collectors from U.S. coins, for example, come in and collect and participate in the Paramount auction.
Right. So there's a Chris. There's a question there from Don. I'm sure you can see it. Sam and I are both to be spectacled, so we have to lean in a little bit to read.
That's all right. I'll take Don's question and comment. He's saying it's a seller's market at this point, and it is. If you have coins right now, chances are that you're going to make a profit on them, assuming that it is good quality and you've bought it through the regular channels. So that the chances are that coins are higher value now than they were a year ago or 5 years ago. So if you have coins, people are calling us, and some are consigning, we're having discussions, etc. How the market turns, it's difficult. Like I would never make any predictions as to what happens, because it's really unpredictable. But it's still, in a way, there's still opportunities. Even if it's a seller's market, there's great opportunities and there's great chances to still buy things.
Yeah.
So,
Chris, if I could add on to that, one thing that I've been noticing happening because it's a seller's market and prices are so strong, it's pulling out more material from the woodwork. More people want to take advantage of this. And so what we're seeing is really special collections coming up for auction that wouldn't normally, we'd expect to get so many at one point. So it's a seller's market in the sense that the prices are higher than they have been historically, but it's also a buyer's market in the sense that you're having opportunities now to acquire material that you wouldn't typically be able to.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. Sort of, we see this kind of across categories, right? We see this, for instance, in comics. Tomorrow, the Promise collection comes to auction for the first time, which had never previously been known about, and certainly the consignors saw the success comics had had in the recent years and said it's time to sell this extraordinary collection of books that hadn't been seen since the 1940s. We see it in sports cards, obviously, and it's a question that comes up again and again and again across categories, which is the last year and a few months have been extraordinary in terms of sales. You've record card sales, record comic sales, again and again and again. When does the market, when does that bubble pop? And the fact is, every time somebody asks that, it gets bigger, it gets better. There's something that comes to market that's never before been seen, whether it's Paramount or the Promise collection in comics, or some things that are upcoming in sports. So it is it's a question that's starting to not have, there is no sort of timeline, right? There is no sort of, what you're seeing here is really unprecedented, and it's sort of an inexplicable and unfathomable thing that you don't really have a period for the end of that sentence.
Yeah, I mean, for the other categories, and again, I think it's important to know that coins have existed for a long time. It's sort of they've been collected for 4 centuries. Modern sports cards have not, and therefore they're much more volatile than coins. Coins, you will not see sort of the market fluctuates so sharply. It's more of a sort of low slope curves that comes in and out. So, and again, people are finding things to buy in our auctions. They're competing, and they're collecting in a time that is not so simple. The last 18 months, but yeah, it's pent up demand is a big thing. And again, as Sam said, we're having, the market is bringing out all these high quality coins, and it creates opportunities again. But yeah, should we talk about the May sale a little bit? And
sure, I wanted to get to that because the May sale was interesting. I know it did 9 million, which, as we've said before, is 42 million for the Paramount, 50 all told. But certainly for the May signature and platinum night, $9 million is nothing to take lightly.
Yeah, absolutely. So I pay very close attention to all of our numbers and compare our auctions year over year and our growth in the market. And that May auction was actually our largest spring sale by value since 2014. And 2014 was before we had the Hong Kong auctions and the larger select auctions and the monthly showcase auctions and all these different venues. So it was just sort of, there were fewer opportunities to sell, so they were bigger. But since then, we've added these other venues, and I'm happy to see that we're still able to reach those levels of those earlier auctions where even though we have now our select auctions selling $350,000 a week and probably a few $1 million a month worth of showcase auctions that otherwise would have all gone into the spring signature auction.
The sales.
So what we see, Robert, is, and what we're pushing for as a team is smaller signature events. These main events need to be much more curated, in our opinion, and that's what we've been doing. So people that follow us, that are watching, if you came to our New York auction or A&A auction 10 years ago, we would have 3 times the number of lots that we have now, maybe 4 times. Okay, and that simply had to do with the fact that we hadn't developed our venues quite just yet. So over the last several years, the World in Ancients coin team have been working very diligently on the online aspect of our auctions and the online venues, which are, you know, the weekly selects and the showcase monthlies. And, you know, that has allowed us to make these main events or the platinum nights much smaller, much more concise. It's much more pleasant if you are a bidder to participate in those. You don't have to wait hours and hours, or it's usually over a couple of days. You know, shorter sessions. So that's the trend that we are seeing and what we're pushing for. I'll make just another comment and throw it back to you because I think it's important. In 3091, which was the May auction that we just had, and I say hello to my Brazilian friends that are watching, we had a very significant silver coin collection that we presented, and it's sort of a little microcosm of an illustration of everything we've been talking about. Okay, so there was one coin, I think we have it up if our wizard Tommy can put it up. It's a silver coin at 640 of Brazil, and you know, that coin I made a bet with a friend. It sold for $55,200. It's an unbelievable result. Okay, and all these the select silver coins that we presented in this collection. This was one of the slowest auctions we've had. At one point, we were selling 30, 35 lots an hour, and that was because the activity was immense. You know, the peak of the Brazilian market, if we look back, it was 2009, 2010, 2011. There was a coin that was nicer than this that sold for about 45,000 11 years ago, and my bet was that this one would not beat the one from 10 years ago, and it did, and it beat by 25%. And then if we go back and look at these all these individual coins from this sale, same thing that is reflected. If you take Paramount and say, look at all these super expensive coins and look at the great demand that we had for it, the Brazilian collection that we sold recently is a smaller example of just that. It's not six-figure coins, but everything basically went higher than we expected, and that that again shows that great demand and how auctions really is. Auction is free market, right? I mean, people always talk about the free market, right? What is the free market? The free market is you pay whatever you bid whatever you want, right? And the market and the price is decided by the two people who are 3 or 4 or 10 that are bidding on that item. We have no influence on the final price. So that's great to see, and and the company as a whole is seeing this in other categories too. So let's see. My friend Tomás Ribeiro, who's a friend of mine, considering the pandemic effect we're seeing today with more people in bidding wars, how can one tell how far they should go in bidding, considering investment perspective and concurrent? Okay, that's great question. I mean, it's a personal question. The answer is, as much as you're willing to go to add that coin to your collection. But I think one thing that I've seen that is common to great collectors and people who build great groups of coins, great collections of coins, is their focus on quality, right? So basically, if you focus on quality, there is little chance that over time you go wrong. So that's
I think it's also probably worth noting something that we often tell people, which is buy a thing because you love it, because whatever happens to its value, it's certainly going to have you should buy a thing you love to own, you want to own, you need to own, you have to own, not simply buying it for the investment value alone, correct?
Correct. And also the other thing is the collectors that have been most successful financially on their results, when time comes to sell, are the ones that are most aggressive when they're buying. They're focused and aggressive. Okay, so when they see something that they want or they see something that is special, they go after it very aggressively. So it's focus, and then once you pick what you need or what you want and what you must have, then you go aggressively after it.
Well, it reminds me of something that Bob Simpson, the great coin collector, whose coins we've been selling for the last year, has also often talked about, which is the fact that he would buy a coin because of the way it looked. It may not have been the highest grade, but if it was beautiful to look at, he would take that version over the higher grade version. Is that something that you guys discuss as well with the folks who have an interest in World of Nations?
Yeah. So as Chris was saying earlier, focus on quality. So one thing that I tell clients who are trying to figure out what to buy is that quality never goes out of style. So what we see in collecting trends is that sometimes there's a focus on more academic pieces or historically interesting, or a certain time period that gets more focused at certain times. Like if you look at ancient coins, Roman bronzes, for example, used to be far more popular as a collectible or a collecting area than they are today. And there's a number of reasons for that we can get into. But
give me two.
One, I think, is people are realizing that it's harder to tell an undoctored coin, something that might have smoothing or tooling in it, which has turned a number of people off of those sorts of coins. And that sort of gets it back to the point that I was making, which is 100 years ago, that was socially acceptable. That was considered a fine thing to do to your coins, to smooth out the fields and make them more attractive that way. So they're maybe attractive from here, but if you look at them under a magnifying glass, you're going to see that the fields aren't as pristine as they might look. So that was a trend, say 100 years ago, and things have changed today, even if the coins are selling for more than they did 100 years ago. But high quality coins, though, were going to be popular back then as they are today. That's the sort of thing that's never going to go out of style. I think collectors are always going to want top quality over, academic rarities, as we might say.
But I'm fascinated by an academic rarity because obviously it sort of suggests it's a difficult to find. It's something we're studying. That would be a thing that would be as coveted as a quality or a beautiful piece, just simply because of the nature of what it is.
Yeah, it is for certain collectors, but I think it's a little harder to access, to understand why you should be collecting it. Like I can show you a top quality coin from one of our auctions. I have some in my pocket from our upcoming August auction. Like here, so this, I don't know if you can see this.
Yeah, hold it up a little
Yes.
bit.
Yeah, a 1712 Peru 8 Escudos, an MS66. I can show this to you, and you can see right away that is a fantastic coin. And I can explain to you why, by the grade and how well it's struck, that's a phenomenal piece for the issue. But showing you something that might be in a AU details holder, off quality, not a big gold denomination like that. That's, I think, a little harder to understand and a little harder to, justifying the same sort of prices as for something like this.
But does that mean does that get to the question of the changing nature of the collector? That there are more collectors coming in that there may have been once upon a time more people collecting in World of Nations for that academic rarity than there were for the quality of the coin. Has that changed over the last 10, 15 years?
Yeah, I think there is a shift in that sort of collecting focus. Another example of that, and Chris probably can talk to this as well, 50, 60 years ago in world coins, what you saw a lot of were what we call yeoman collections, right? R.S. Yeoman had his book of sort of key world coin types, and people would just go through and get one of each. And we get these sorts of collections in sometimes, and that we call them yeoman collections, where they just had one example of each. But there wasn't so much of a focus on quality in those sorts of collections as they were in just completing it, getting one of each type. And of course, the higher quality ones still commanded a premium back then, but those are the sort of coins, the higher quality coins that they got in those collections that really appreciated in value more so.
Chris, did you want to?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's when I started 25 years ago, particularly Latino collectors, they will collect by date. So if you have like an issue that has 30 dates, you would have 30 coins that looked exactly the same, except the digit on the date would change. Okay. And that made for the issues were rare. Let's say, an 1892 20,000 is that's a key date. So people would buy whatever coin they could of that date to fill the hole, like Sam was mentioning. So, what's been happening more recently and over the last few years is that people are focusing on quality. Like they won't buy a hold coin or a coin with problems, even if that coin is rare, right? Even if that date is rare. So I had a Peruvian. We had a Peruvian two escudos of 1749. I want to say, maybe that's a really rare date, but had a hole in it. So people don't want it, even if it's a rare date. What they do want is beautiful coins, right? So you might have a coin that's very common, or shows up all the time, but in the example that Sam brought today, the 8 escudos of Peru, it's not a particularly rare coin. It's actually of the Cobb gold 8 escudos issues. It's one of the most common ones. But they're shipwreck coins. They have problems. They were made into jewelry. They were scratched, circulated. So if we find something like this, where it's an absolute gem that was made in the early 18th century, people will go after that. And what has increased is sort of that premium for quality over time. So before, you would have a mint state coin is worth twice as much as a VF coin, and now that ratio is gone completely. Like the VF coin is worth the same, and then the choice quality coin is worth 10, 20, 50 times more than what it was before. So there's many aspects, many reasons for that. The world coin market is moving ahead, and it's becoming more and more, let's say, modernized and sort of regulated, to the protection of the collectors, and particularly the ones that are less experienced. It's much easier to get into collecting now, making fewer mistakes than it was 20 years ago. And I think that's probably a good segue to talk about our weekly select auctions, which is
let's do that in a minute, but let's take this question from Ronald, because I think this is actually a pretty good question that transitions us to that. And before we do that, I also want to talk about Una and the Lion, because I think that's an interesting sort of coin to look at in terms of that gives you a pretty good idea of kind of where the market is as well, right?
Yeah, that's it's a rare coin that comes up in every auction.
Yeah.
It's a good bellwether for the market, the Una and the Lion, right? Because you have any given year across all auctions around the world, probably a dozen or more Unas that come up for sale. And so we had a 63 sell in the May auction for 420,000, which is historically a really good price. If you compare that to what they were selling for a few years ago, that coin would have been worth 200,000, 150,000, something like that. So for it to double in the span of a few years is a really impressive mark. And we'll get to this more if we have time later. But speaking of Unas, in the August auction, and that's the other coin I have here, actually. See if you can see that. It's a 66 star Ultra Cameo Una and the Lion in the August auction, which is the single finest graded. And, that'll sort of be another high mark in the market. That very well could set a new world record for an Una and the Lion. I wouldn't be surprised to see this cross the $1 million mark.
Wow. Well, thank you for letting me hold it and giving it back to you very quickly. And I like the fact that you came here just with it in your coat jacket. What a casual man you are. But hey, Tommy, if you don't mind pulling up that question from Ronald, because I think that's a good question to transition to talking about the select sales. So, Chris, if you'd like to tackle Ronald's question.
The question is, as to ancient coins, are there risks the newly found troves will enter the market? I'll let Sam answer that, and if you could use the owl tetradrach as an example is interesting.
So, I guess I'll begin answering that question by saying ancient coins have been collected for literally centuries, since the Italian Renaissance. And coin hoards have been found for literally a millennia. There were hoards of Greek coins found in ancient Roman times, which were buried hundreds of years before that and were considered ancient coins by them. So there are new coins that come out, and it is something we have to be careful of with cultural property laws and all that sort of thing to make sure that everything is above board. But, even still, there are new groups of coins that come onto the market through government agencies, like the British Portable Antiquities Scheme is a good example of that, where when a hoard is discovered and it's not considered important enough to be acquired by the museum, then it sort of gets the stamp of approval to enter the marketplace, and it gets recorded by archaeologists and scientists, and then it gets dispersed to collectors. All that being said, the reason I say that ancient coins have been collected for centuries is that coins have been found for centuries as well. And we sort of know the relative rarity of different coins out there. So Chris brought up the example of the Athenian tetradrachm. That's one of the most popular coins in existence. And, there's a lot of them around. But the fact is that it's also one of the most popular coins, and it's always been one of the most popular coins, and it's always been relatively accessible because groups of those have been found for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So yes, there is the possibility of new material coming onto the market, but I don't really see that as a risk because it happens all the time, and it just will get.
Yeah, and also sometimes what happens when a group comes up to the market is that it reignites interest in that issue. And then people it's the opposite effect. You would expect, and we've seen this happen, where we have a hoard or new hoard or something, that we have a group of coins coming in. And it certainly happened with the Athena tetradrachm that Sam was talking about, that, a large group came to the market and the prices kept going up. Okay. And that's because it just stirred more interest in the market. And all of a sudden, the increase in supply is matched by an increase in demand, and sometimes surpassed by increase in demand, which is what happened in this case. So, I wouldn't be too concerned. Again, it could also happen that you can find a trove of coins that are modern coins, right? There's always that possibility, but I wouldn't think about that too much when making decisions about purchases, like what I'm going to collect or I'm going to purchase. Like, I wouldn't be concerned with what if a bunch of these coins appear in the market in the future. They might, they may not, but it doesn't have great meaning to value over time.
We've been here 45 minutes, and I know we have a little bit of ground left to cover, and I know we have questions that are waiting for us, but I do want to get to the select auctions. In as much as that I was part of the naming group for these particular auctions, as Communications Director, I was glad to be part of that. How do we communicate to folks that what were once called weekly auctions are not just where we put lesser coins, but this is our select auctions is what we call them now, are very curated, correct?
Mhm.
I mean, these are significant, and it also takes a load off of the signature sales as well. So they aren't the 4,000 lot sales, and people can sort of understand that this is where we come to put significant coins that you and Chris have taken care of in terms of making sure they are as high quality as any other auction.
Yeah, and so that rebranding happened a month or so ago, where our weekly auctions are now called select auctions to more accurately reflect that. And I think what it underscores is that these should not be considered by any means lesser sales than the signature and platinum night auctions. It's just a different venue that's more appropriate for different kinds of coins. And we see routinely material that would be good signature level stuff by value selling in that venue. And I think oftentimes it'll sell for better than it would in a signature auction, because it's not going to be overshadowed by the $100,000 lots or something like that. Where if I had a coin that was $500, $1,000, $2,000, I would want to sell it in the select auction, because it's going to stand out better. It's not going to be a part of this larger sale with higher quality, higher grade material. It's going to be sort of in a smaller, well curated sale. There's only, we're going to continue to try and grow these, but right now we're at about 650 lots a week, which is much more accessible and easier to get through and sort of study the sale and figure out what you want to bid on, as opposed to, like the sales Chris was talking about 10 years ago, where we had 5,000 lot signature sales.
Yeah, and it's also a great entry door for people to start. And we see this constantly. We look at the statistics all the time about the bidders and people coming in. And Sam stays on top of that. But we new clients all the time, and they start buying coins. In the select auctions, it's split into two. We have Wednesday night, Thursday night. Wednesday night is 8 coins, about half of those 650 lots that Sam mentioned, and then the following night, Thursday, we have the world coins. So you can, and they last for about 2 hours. Those sessions. And you can, there's something for everybody. If you're collecting British coins, French coins, ancient coins, Chinese, whatever, there's something there for you. And it's something there every week. And I really recommend that people don't miss these auctions, because there is treasures to find in them. There's Easter eggs that we put in there, house coins, better items that is of significant interest. And what we're seeing now also, Robert, which we didn't see before, is lots and lots of people consigning directly to our select auctions. Okay, so dealers or other collectors or people have their duplicates, they're picking specifically the select auctions, because it's a quicker turnaround. If they have good coins, like Sam said, they stand out in these sales. We market these sales heavily every week. There's opening announcements, closing announcements. We've gone from 30,000 every week, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, to now getting close to 400,000. And I can't. It's my favorite venue that we have. The Platinum Nights is sort of like, if you have those big collections, right, they come together nicely, right? And Heritage is sort of have a lot of organic clients that, contact us. And so we build those, and those are great. But the weekly select is really sort of the first entry door. It's where we cross market, where people start collecting coins, right? So we're very interested in that, because the Platinum Nights or Paramount, you asked before. I mean, most of the bidders in Paramount, I mean, if you talk about 50, 100, 200 $1 million coins, are sort of experienced collectors, right? It's the majority of them are in that way. Whereas, if we have the opportunity to increase the pie, that is, to add new collectors in the weekly selects, that's where that happens most of the time. And we're very interested in that, because the more collectors we have, the bigger the market. So that's of interest to us.
Well, that's interesting because we do that kind of across categories. The other day, I was watching a Sunday, a comic sale on Sunday, and there's an X-Men #1 that would be in, obviously in a platinum auction or a big auction, and it sells for $30,000, and it might have been overshadowed by one in a slightly better condition or a significantly better condition, but it's there amongst sort of $100 lots, $500 lots. I believe you've seen those kind of similar results in these select auctions in World and Ancients, right?
Yeah, I sent Tommy a few links that maybe he can pull up, but just on the ancient side, looking at results from just the past few weeks, past couple of months, one that really jumped out to me was an Alexander the Great Stater, graded AU Strike 5 Surface 3, light marks, meaning it has some little scratches and sort of taps on it, that sold for $7,200. I mean, if that was in a signature auction, I'm convinced that it would have sold for $4,000 or $5,000.
Because it would have been overshadowed.
Yeah, because we would have had Mint State or Choice Mint State or Choice AU Star, coins that were just objectively higher grade. And this one's, it's not necessarily a rare type or a rare variety or anything like that. It's just sort of a nice, good collector quality coin. And it wound up selling for a very strong price for what I would have guessed AU Star or Choice AU Star, low-end Mint State would have sold for.
And that wasn't the only one, right?
Right. So on the world side, a recent result that really stuck out to me was an 1859 Ansel sovereign.
Oh, yeah.
So this is a scarce type for the 1859 Victoria sovereigns, involving the way the A is depicted on the obverse. In the legend, and this one wound up selling for $17,400 for just an AU58 example. In our May signature auction, and I don't know if Tommy, in our May signature auction, we had an AU53 sell for $7,200. So just 2 grade points below, from the 58 selling for 2.5 times what the AU53 sold for in the signature auction. So, those results convince me that a lot of coins are going to realize better prices in a select venue than in the signature auction, where it might be a little lesser grade than other examples or a little off quality or something that doesn't, isn't a sort of standalone highlight. It'll be highlighted better.
So are you having consignors ask you to put coins specifically in these select auctions and keep them out of the platinums?
Absolutely. Yeah. Clients recognize that, and as Chris mentioned earlier, dealers particularly appreciate the faster turnaround time. So this is something that we pay close attention to as well, what our turnaround time is from start to finish. So, and we had this conversation in one of our meetings a week or so ago, where if we get a coin in today and it's already graded, meaning we don't need to send it to NGC or PCGS to get it holdered. If it's already graded, we can get it in an auction in about 6 weeks' time in the normal course of business. And then the auction's up for 1 week, and then settlement is 45 days from that. So start to finish, it's about a 3-month process. Whereas if you were to consign now to, say, our August signature auction, the settlement date for that, I think, is the last week of September, first week of October. Right. So, you're looking at a longer time frame. And if you don't make the deadline, which is tomorrow or early next week for the August auction, you'd have to wait for the October signature auction with a settlement date of December. So it's a much more attractive pitch to be able to say that we can get it turned around in 3 months' time.
So one thing I've noticed about being next to you is the fact that this thing goes awfully quick. We've been here almost an hour, and I've noticed we haven't talked about June Hong Kong. I'd like to close with that because I want to just sort of jump immediately into the August signature, because that consignment is still, that window is still open for consigning for that, correct?
Yeah, correct.
So talk to me a little bit about why you think this is going to be, you said to me the other day, this is going to be a very special auction. What makes this one so significant, and why should folks be eager to be part of it?
Yeah, so the August Signature and Platinum Night auction has really come together very well over the last month. And I'm not sure we've announced it officially yet, but there are going to be 3 standalone collections. We've advertised the Cape Coral collection already, the next installment of Cape Coral, which we've been selling for a few years, so that this is the next portion is going to be the Spanish and Latin American coins. And I can't recall the last time we offered a group of Latin American crowns of this quality. So I think collectors are going to be really ravenous for it, really go after that. And then what we just got in-house 2 weeks ago is the WTR collection, which is a group of high-quality Spanish and Latin American gold coins. And so that's going to, I think, complement the Cape Coral collection really well, where Cape Coral is entirely silver coins and WTR is almost entirely gold coins, all Spanish and Latin American. It's going to draw out all major and minor collectors of Spanish and Latin American coins to the auction. And then the third standalone collection we're going to have is the Monaco collection, which is a very high-end group of Roman coins. And many of them have relatively recent pedigrees, but the assemblage is really impressive in its entirety, and I think is going to draw people out as well. And beyond that, we have some other highlights, like the ones that I've shown here, like the finest graded Una and the Lion. So all in all, that's going to be possibly our best auction of the year, aside from Paramount. I don't think we'll quite reach that level, but it's going to be really something.
So if folks want to consign, now is probably a good time to give your email address, Sam and Cris.
Sure. My email address is sams@ha.com.
And mine is Cris, CRIS, @ha.com.
So, Tommy, if there are questions, feel free to feed them as we begin to wrap things up. But I did want to also talk about the June Hong Kong auction. Mm-hmm. This will be all right. Here's a question for you: what is Sam's perspective on the market for ancient Indian coins, especially Kushan and Gupta?
So that's an interesting market that I can't say I consider myself an expert in by any stretch.
Yeah.
There's a lot to know there and a lot of varieties, and there's a few references for it, a few newer references that I think is really helping the market for Kushan coins that people can actually study and see the catalog and all known types. Unfortunately, NGC doesn't grade those coins. They're considered ineligible types.
Why?
Because they don't have the expertise either to properly authenticate and identify them. So if and when NGC or PCGS step into that market, I think that would really expand the number of collectors who feel comfortable buying in it. For now, the main grading service that we use is ANACS, ANACS, who does grade and encapsulate Kushan coins, but it does limit the pool of potential buyers somewhat.
Got it. Cris, you want to take this question? Somebody's
yes,
giving you
sure. M1FL asks if we're going to ever host a Shipwreck coin auction, and we would love to. If there was, actually, we've sold, Shipwreck coins. We sell Shipwreck coins all the time. 1715 Fleet, a Tocha, like he mentioned, 400 years. And some years ago, we even sold some non-numismatic Shipwreck items. So if we have the collection, like this is the beauty of a heritage, right? If you have a collection that's worthwhile for auction, it doesn't matter what it is, we'll have a solution for you. Okay, so if there is a collection, let's say with 150 beautiful Shipwreck coins that, or suggest that we can do a standalone catalog like we're doing with Cape Coral and WTR and all these other collections, we would happily do it. We would love to do it. So if M1FL has a collection of Shipwreck that you'd like to consign, we would love to do the auction. Mr. Brand also, Harvey, let's see what he's saying. He's a professor. The recent Patrick sale of Canadian tokens and early dog clicks were very strong. Do you see Canadian market moving towards tokens as opposed to usual issues? It's a good question, Harvey. I think that has to do with the fact that we just happen to have at the same time or close two unbelievable groups of Canadian tokens, right? One that belonged to the late, what's his name, Sam? I forgot. I'm forgetting. Doug Robbins, that we presented over time, and then Patrick more recently. And, that was simply probably two of the best groups of Canadian tokens ever to ever come to the market. So, there was a tremendous amount of demand and attention to those sales, and the results were very impressive. But I don't think that offshadows the regular Canadian issues, which also are very popular. And we have, we are one of them. I would say probably the premier auction house for Canadian coins, if you look at our history of presenting Canadian collections. So, I don't think that's going to overshadow the regular issues at all. So, Harvey, you can take a breath of relief that your coins are just as great as they were right before. And so is your, all the Newfie coins that you have, fantastic. So we have another collection here from Gregory. What do you think of commemorative coins that reproduce a rare most impossible find coin in terms of value? For example, this year the Royal Canadian Mint released a gold reproduction of the 1936 dot cents. Sam, you want to take it? I can take it. I mean, well, I love. Go ahead.
Yeah, it does speak to some things that we're seeing, like the example that he mentions. Examples that have passed through our hands that I think really speak to this are the Royal Mint's Una and the Lion commemoratives, just like the Three Graces commemoratives, and we have a few of those coming up in future auctions. Where, the Una and the Lion that I showed you earlier, this coin that could very well sell for $1 million, and we saw a 63 selling for 420,000. Even a low grade, if you had a AU details example of the Una and the Lion, that's still probably a $100,000 coin. So most people are not going to be able to get one of those for their collection, but the Royal Mint issues this series where you could get an example for a few $100s or a few $1,000s, depending on the size and metal. So I think it's allowing people to get that kind of material. And what's special about those sorts of issues is that it's not the first Una and the Lion commemorative to come out. Other countries have done so, like Alderney has produced some, but this is a Royal Mint product. It's not I don't want to say it's not a mainstream country, but it's not one of the main, it's not the same issuing authority as who produced the original Una and the Lion, and it's not a private issue. This is the Royal Mint that produced the Una and the Lion. So I think those sorts of coins, and it was produced in very limited quantities. So I think those sorts of coins will continue to have some premium in time because the originals are just inaccessible to so many collectors.
And it also helps people to advance their collecting. They might start with the modern issues and then migrate to vintage. I mean, it's very, we don't handle as much. We're more of, we offer more classic coins, vintage coins, but it's certainly a very significant market, and it's growing. So, the mints are finding that this could be a source of income for them. And they are getting better at the issues. They're learning how to issue these things, how to limit the quantities. The United States is, the U.S. Mint leads on that. For example, they did the Morgan dollar commemorative recently that, they sold 170,000 commemoratives in 15 minutes. So that, all of that we like because, again, doors into the market of collecting or the world of collecting coins. And I think the Royal Mint and other mints around the world, Royal Canadian Mint, the Royal British Mint, doing these programs sort of stimulates collecting. So that's good for us.
Chris, I'm going to answer your phone. I'll see who it is for you afterwards.
Please don't.
Before we wrap up, and look, if you have I should have said this many times, but TommyN@ha.com. If you have an anonymous question, we'll try to get to here in the last few minutes we have here. But I do want to talk about June Hong Kong. And Sam, I'd like for you to kind of address how that will be held again this year.
Yeah, that's a good point. So right now, I don't have any coins from June Hong Kong to show you in person today because all those coins are in Hong Kong right now for lot viewing. Just like we've had the last two times, in June of last year and December of last year, we're having to conduct this as a simulcast auction because we're not able to travel to Hong Kong currently due to travel restrictions because of the coronavirus. But hopefully in December, things will be open back up where we can get back there. But we're hosting it as a simulcast where we have mock viewing at the office for about 2 weeks beforehand. And then people can actually go to the room at the hotel and bid in the room. And we have sort of another auctioneer there taking bids in, and they transmit those bids to our auctioneer in Dallas. So we have 2 floors going on simultaneously. We have the room in Dallas, which will be mostly phone bidders because it's going to be midnight when we're there, and the room in Hong Kong where we have people on the floor. So there's still some challenges. That's obviously one of the major challenges, right, working this simulcast auction where we're not able to have our staff there and do our traditional sales. And then we're still navigating, and we've talked about this before, the tariffs on Chinese coins. Those are still in place. And so we're having to source material from overseas and bring them in on a temporary import and then send them back out so that our consignors and we aren't paying the 7.5% import duty, which that's noted on coins online, which ones are that's applicable for. So it's been challenging in Hong Kong, but I think we've been able to navigate the challenges really well. And frankly, last year, the 2 Hong Kong sales together were our best year ever in terms of Hong Kong auctions.
It is amazing how such a challenging and difficult year was in many ways, for many categories, their best year ever. Mm-hmm. Look, we've been here over an hour. I really do appreciate everybody joining us. If you have questions for Cris and Sam, it's CRISB@ha.com, SamS@ha.com. We will be archiving this on YouTube and on the auction pages, so folks who got here a little late will be able to watch it. We're glad to participate in this particular venue. This has been a lot of fun to do it this way and to see everybody this way. And you guys want to give your phone numbers if folks have other questions or consignments for you?
Well, my phone number is 214-409-1524, but email is usually the best way to get a hold of me.
Same here. I'm on the road a lot. And so email is best. But if anybody wants to call and leave a message, if I'm not there, like my phone was just ringing a minute ago, 214-419-1661. And, we hope to hear from everyone that was, if anyone wasn't able to send their questions or ask their questions today, we're happy to take them on email, and I promise I'll answer every single one of them.
Well, gentlemen, I appreciate you doing this. It's always a great pleasure and a great education to talk World and Nation coins with you. And thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll do this again in this category and many others in the weeks to come. So thanks. We'll see you again.
All right. Thank you.